One spring afternoon, 2010, my 5-year-old son, Elliot, and I decided it was a good afternoon to let his bird fly around the house for the first time. He'd asked for this bird for his 5th birthday, and I thought it was a fantastic idea because on my 13th birthday, my brother had gotten me a bird. And there was a huge lead up to this gift my brother got me. He'd give me hints like, you can play with it, you can wear it, you can eat it. I was very confused and a little scared because my brother didn't really hit it out of the park when it came to getting me gifts. One Christmas, he got me a stuffed bear head, and not the kind that you put on the wall, although that would be weird too, but it was like a stuffed animal, but just the head. Another year, he gave me a Twisted Sister album. But I loved having a bird because it taught me responsibility. I would feed Capri. I got her name off of a shoebox. I'd change her cage, and I'd cover her at night so she wouldn't tweet too early in the morning and wake me up. Several months into our relationship, she laid an egg. I know how sex works, and I didn't have any other parakeets flying around my house. But I was also educated in the North Carolina public school system and didn't have Google. So I let the egg sit for a while, and sadly, I didn't get a baby bird. But it didn't take me long to realize a caged bird is cruel. So I set out to teach her to fly around the house. But I couldn't just start with the whole house. I had to start in one room, but not my room, because I didn't want bird shit on my stuff. So I started in my dad's room. I let Capri out, and she flew around happier than I had ever seen her. She'd perch on top of the curtain rods. And I was far more patient back then than I would be today because I'd sit there for a couple of hours. But eventually I'd get bored, and I'd catch her, and there would be an aggressive re-entry back into her cage. Lots of flapping and pecking. We had a lovely, complicated relationship. But that little taste of freedom made her an even smarter bird, a smart bird even smarter, because she learned how to open and prop the door of her cage open, giving her free reign of the house. She'd fly straight to the person she annoyed the most, my father. She'd sit on his plate when he ate, or on his bald head when he was watching TV. But her favorite place to sit was on my dog's hip. We didn't know it at the time, but that was a bird dog, which, doesn't mean plays well with birds. Usually means retrieve them after they've been shot. But this was not that kind of dog. He was incredibly patient. Capri would sit there for long periods of time, and when he was sick of it, he'd give a little friendly nip in that direction, and off Capri would fly. So that was my experience with birds and dogs. So when spring training day 2010 came around, I went in with the same plan. Start in one room, let DS, Elliot named him after his favorite toy. Yes, mother and son are equally creative when coming up with pet names. Elliot was delighted to see his friend so free and happy, but there weren't a lot of places in this room for DS to land, a lot of slick surfaces that he just kind of slid right off of. But eventually he found a home on the mantle, and he stayed there. And he stayed there. So long that Elliot got bored and turned on the Wii, started to play a game. And I went to take a shower. A couple of minutes after I'm in the bathroom, my then husband pops his head in and says, "Hey, is it okay if I let the dogs in?" I fast forward through my experience and history with birds and dogs, and I'm like, yeah, sure, it's fine. Now, this bathroom had a spa shower, which means no door. It really, in theory, is much better than in real life, but also, my bathroom door didn't have a lock, which meant anybody could come in, and someone usually did. So while I'm showering, my then husband, Todd, thinks it's a good idea to use the bathroom then. And then right behind him comes my son, Elliot. But he's crying. And I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "The dog's got DS." Yeah. If you've never seen a middle-aged soapy woman dart out of a shower, congratulations, because I can't say the same for my ex-husband and my son. I ran with as much grace as possible to the living room, thinking the whole way about the bloodbath of feathers I would find. But when I arrived, my 2 dogs were just standing over DS, who was belly up on the floor. But they were looking at me like, look what we found. I went back to my bathroom to get my robe because for some reason it felt weird being naked in front of my dogs. When I got back to the living room, I picked DS up, and he's short a couple of tail feathers, but he's alive. He's also looking around like, what just happened? Things start to get even crazier. Elliot's crying. I'm on the phone trying to find a vet that takes birds, and my ex-husband is doing nothing because that's his thing. Elliot told us that DS flew off the mantle. One of the dogs jumped up and caught it and put it down. DS flew again, rinse, repeat. The dog caught DS twice, and there was not one puncture wound in that bird. I put our feathered friend into a cage and took him to a vet to spend an hour in an incubator. The doctor told me that the first 24 hours were the most important because small animals like that will usually die of shock because their heart can't take it. I don't know what I was supposed to do with that information, but I thanked him and paid the $220 vet bill, thinking the whole way home, how am I going to pitch this to my then husband, Todd? He said, $220, Gloria? We could have bought 12 more birds for that. He was not wrong. And he also had a valid point because several years before, when my oldest son was napping, his betta fish took a dive into our garbage disposal when I wasn't looking. I slapped on my shoes, went to PetSmart, and bought another one that looked just like it. But this was different because Elliot saw it happen, and I could not let this bird die on my watch. I had to do everything I could. So that night, Elliot and I are putting DS to bed, and as we're covering the cage, I said, maybe we should say a little prayer, Elliot. I don't usually throw prayer out for anything, just anything, but this felt important. And as Elliot is praying, I say one to myself, dear God, if you want this boy to ever believe in you, this bird better be alive when we wake up in the morning. I don't typically threaten God either, but I felt like the stakes were pretty high, and it was a good idea. The next morning, I woke earlier than I typically did because I wanted to check on DS before Elliot got a chance to. Because that night, I'd been thinking about what having that conversation was going to be like if DS died. Like, he would ask, why do things die? Where do they go? I would have to hold him while he cried, missing his friend. And I was never ready for that conversation. I tiptoed into Elliot's room while he's still asleep, and I stand in front of a very quiet cage. One more. God, resurrection's kind of your thing, so it's not too late. I slowly uncover the cage, and I'm kind of squinting because I don't want to see, but there sitting on the perch was a tailless DS delivering the most beautiful chirp I've ever heard. Thank you.